Hello and welcome to Biology Lesson 2.03, Breaking Down to Build It Up. We are talking about in this video two terms. We're talking about catabolism and anabolism. And these are terms that you saw in the last chapter. And we learned that catabolism is to break large things down into small pieces. To break large, we're just going to say things down into small pieces. And anabolism is the opposite. We're going to take small things and build them up into something larger. So where we're starting is over here. We've got little Jimmy's eating a piece of pizza. And this pizza is going to go from this large structure he can hold into his hands to these little guys over here. The C stands for carbohydrate. Let's just do a little key down here. So the C is carbohydrate. And this is going to be a monomer. So these are all monomers. When I say these, I mean the little circles. A is going to be an amino acid. L is a lipid. And N is nucleic acid. Well, if I asked you what the sections of a piece of pizza are, you would probably say crust. You would probably say the cheese. You might say the pepperoni. And it turns out these are a pretty good, pizza is a good way to talk about catabolism and how we work with, how our body works with macromolecules. So the goal here is to understand how we go from catabolism to anabolism. Well, it turns out the crust is mostly carbohydrates. The pepperoni is mostly meat, and so that's going to be proteins. And if you've ever melted a big chunk of cheese, there's usually this big pile of, especially cheddar cheese, of oil that just floats on top of the cheese. It turns out the cheese is mostly lipids. So you take a bite of your pizza. And the first thing you do is you bite it again, and you bite it again, and you chew it. And you go from a structure that you can hold in your hands to kind of if you spit it back out, you'd have a pile of goo. Well, it goes down into your stomach and it gets split again. And we keep breaking it again and again and again and again until we take that nice big piece of pepperoni and we break it down into its monomer, which are amino acids. That's our little A circle. We take the crust and we break that down into its monomer. Got this big slice of carbohydrates. We break this down into its monomer, C, which is glucose. That looks like an E more than a C, doesn't it? And the cheese would get broken down into its monomer as well. We're just going to put an L. And mixed with all of this, we have those nucleic acids. So this all has nucleic acids. So this gets broken down into N. And it gets sent into our small intestine. So we have these things floating around in our small intestine. They get picked up and put into our blood. Well, what happens from there is a lot like what happens in a factory. And so I have my cell factory here. But before we talk about that, this was all here. I'll do a little catabolism. All of this breaking down was catabolism. So now they're getting carried through my blood and they enter into a cell. So now we have these guys and they are going into a cell. Through the cell membrane. So the cell membrane's like the factory walls. It's what keeps everything in and out from keeps everything, controls what goes in and out of the cell. All right, and we've got these little guys and they're doing different jobs. So what does this all mean? Here in the nucleus, if you can see the printout, it says DNA. So the nucleotides, a lot of these guys end up going into the cell. And we take these nucleotides and we turn them into either RNA or DNA. So now I'm taking the nucleotide, which is the monomer, and I'm turning it into DNA or RNA, which is the polymer. And we use that DNA and RNA to run the cell. That's why this guy's sitting at the computer, because he's telling everybody else in the cell what to do. But the point is, I broke it down. Now I'm building it back up into what you see on the control screen. So guys, this is anabolism. So over here, we're going to write our anabolism. I'm taking my carbs, and I'm actually not building my carbs up. If you look, this says energy generator. So the carbs are going into the part of the cell, and this is the little power bars coming out. So my carbs are fueling the cell. And we said earlier that's what carbs do. Now there are some carbs that are used for structures, but here, this is the powerhouse of the cell. And some of you guys might go, hey, isn't that the mitochondria? That's what this represents. Okay, so my lipids, we really don't see lipids doing much here. The lipids could get tossed into here too. But the third thing we see happening, I'm going to switch ink colors here. I'm going to go with a light green, is this guy is putting these amino acids into this great big factory machine. It says ribosomes, but we've got this whole factory line. So we have our amino acids. Whoops, well, it's okay, it's still green. And look what's coming out the other end. It doesn't say, does it? Well, what's happening is I'm using these amino acids and I'm hooking them together and I'm putting them in boxes and I'm packaging them and I'm sending them out of the cell, or I might be sending them back around to work on repairing the cell. But we turn these amino acids into proteins. So proteins are the polymer and amino acids are the monomers. I'll just abbreviate that. And that's anabolism. Well, it turns out that making proteins is pretty much the job of a cell. That's the most important job that a cell has. Basically, if we had to sum it up, a cell is a protein factory that is operated by nucleic acids. So these guys are sitting in the control room and they're telling all the equipment what to do. And the whole purpose, P-U-R-P-O-S-E, the whole purpose for a cell's existence, basically, . is to make proteins, powered by the carbohydrates, operated by the operator here, the nucleic acids. But this all started with a piece of pizza. I broke it down, came into the cell, and then the cell built it back up. Well, why go through all this? Why not just keep the proteins in the pepperoni and the proteins that are in the cheese and things? Why not keep those together and just reuse the whole thing? Because it's cheese and you're you. The proteins and the structures that are useful for plants or from the pig that the pepperoni came from aren't the proteins that your body needs. As a species, our proteins are unique. And so we have to undergo this process in order to assemble the things that our body needs. All right, so what are your takeaways here? You should understand that the things that you eat are in polymer form. So let's add that. Polymers get broken down into monomers through catabolism. The monomers enter the cell. Some of them have different fates. Some are used for energy, some are used for control, some are used to produce things, but we reassemble all of these monomers into larger structures through anabolism. And that the whole purpose for every cell, it doesn't matter if you're a little amoeba or if you're you're trillions of cells. Every cell in your body is trying to make proteins. Remember, we said how many letters can you make if you've got a couple of monomers? Like if you have CAT, you could do ACT, you can do CAT, you can do TAC, although I'm not sure that's a word. But if you have a whole alphabet full of letters, you can make a dictionary. And those are our proteins. We've got lots and lots and lots of proteins. Okay, that's all for now. Thanks for watching and have a good day.